does put her deal again to MPs, will those Eurosceptic Conservatives who voted against her deal twice change their minds and vote for it this time? Could they get it over the line this time? Well, Mark Francois is one of the deputy chairman of the group, led by Jacob Rees-Mogg, which calls itself the European Research Group.
Well, if nothing has changed, I shall vote against it just as I did on Tuesday.
But what if the Attorney-General, Geoffrey Cox, comes up with, which is being reported, this extra legal advice which makes it clear that if the backstop becomes permanent, then that would mean a fundamental change of circumstances, and so the UK could unilaterally pull out of the backstop?
Well,
would that be enough to make you vote for it?
Well, the way this has been handled...
Would that be enough to get you to vote for it?
Well, let me explain. The way this has been handled has been chaotic. On the Monday night, we had complex legal documents being given out to MPs at 1:45 midnight. On Tuesday, the Attorney-General provided his written legal advice to Parliament, which we all read very carefully before we voted. They gave that out sort of mid-morning. Then at 5 o'clock, 2 hours before the vote, they came up with some sort of additional advice to do with...
So it was all a bit of a rush.
Well,
so if he clarifies this, and this does turn out to be true, that he makes it clear that if the backstop becomes permanent, then that means a fundamental change of circumstances, so the UK could unilaterally pull out of it. Would that be enough to get you to vote for Mrs May's deal a third time?
Well, we had a challenge.
Yes or no?
Well, I'm not here to do yes or no questions.
But it's really straightforward.
Well, I haven't...
Would that be enough for you?
Well, I haven't yet seen what the Attorney-General has said.
If it's that, would that be enough?
Well, with respect, we're talking about an international treaty. And one of the things I've learned as a Member of Parliament after 18 years, particularly when you're dealing with the European Union, is read the small print. So we established a thing called the Star Chamber of MPs...
Well, let's not go back over what happened on Tuesday. You looked at it and the advice wasn't enough.
No, but what I'm saying...
So you said if there isn't a change, you won't vote for it. I'm saying this might be a change, and I'm asking you if that would be enough.
And what I'm telling you, when I get the chance, is we will ask the Star Chamber to look at this additional question, because it's a point of international law. It's very complex.
Okay.
So, please, so the Star Chamber will examine this and will then advise the ERG on what to do. So I'm not trying to duck your question, but I can't give you an answer until we've had the advice of the Star Chamber.
Theresa May is going to warn that if her deal fails to pass a third time, then she says you will get a really long delay and you might lose Brexit. Are you prepared to take that gamble?
The deal, the Withdrawal Agreement, which is a draft international treaty, does not take us out of the European Union. I've read it. That's why we've been against it all along. There must be some reason why we keep voting against it.
But it's the only deal on offer. The EU are not going to negotiate another one. You surely don't believe that's a possibility or realistic. That's the only deal.
Well, if you were buying a car and someone said, this car doesn't start, but it's the only car you can buy, would you buy it? You
can give me all the analogies in the world. I'm telling you, you know, that's the only deal the EU is going to get involved in. They have had enough. That's clear.
The Telegraph and the Sun, when the thing first came out, went through it with a fine-tooth comb, as did members of Parliament. They concluded, in their words, it was a surrender document.
Right.
I'm not prepared to surrender to anybody.
But it could take you out, the UK, out of the EU on March the 29th.
Well, the default position, despite...
Are you prepared to take the gamble?
Well, the default position is, despite yesterday's vote, legally, we leave on the 29th of March.
You surely don't believe that is going to happen. Theresa May is preparing a request for a one-off extension to June.
Well, the Prime Minister can request whatever she likes. After this shambles in the House of Commons last night, you know, in 18 years as a Member of Parliament, I've never seen anything like last night.
That may be the case, but the EU is likely to grant that extension.
Well, the House of Commons has got to debate it today. We haven't taken a decision yet. And we will also, by the way, your viewers might want to know, we're also likely to be voting today on whether or not to take a second referendum off the table.
Right.
An amendment was tabled to that effect last night. If it's selected, we'll vote on that.
Let's say that the Commons mandates Theresa May to, yes, go back to Brussels and ask for an extension. They're likely to say yes. We're not leaving on March the 29th, are we?
Well, if you read the government's motion today, it says that we would ask for an extension, but only if the withdrawal agreement passes.
And that's likely to be amended. Do you honestly believe, can you look me in the eye and say, the UK is leaving the EU on March the 29th?
I very much hope so.
That is not... Everybody knows what that means. That means you can't guarantee it. You don't know.
I cannot guarantee it, but 17.4 million people voted for it. So, excuse me, it's my turn. So I very much hope that we will honour the decision of 17.4 million British people and leave on time on the 29th of March.
And Mrs May, if she were here, would say, and if you vote for her deal a third time around, then we'll be leaving.
Well, and I would say, as I am here, having read the deal, and with respect, Victoria, have you read it?
Of course I've read it.
Well, so
twice.
So have I, twice.
Right.
So then you know it means we don't leave.
I also know it's the only deal in town.
Yes, but if it's a rancid deal, why vote for it?
That's your choice. Should Cabinet Ministers who defied party instructions in those votes last night be sacked?
Yes.
What do you think of the fact they haven't been?
I think collective responsibility fell off its horse and died last night. Sarah Newton was one minister who resigned on a point of honour because she didn't obey the three-line whip, and I think amongst her colleagues she's engendered tremendous respect for doing the proper and right thing in those circumstances.
Why hasn't Mrs May sacked them?
Because I don't think she has the political authority to do that anymore.
How would you describe the state of her political authority today?
I have seen better run parish councils than what I saw in the House of Commons last night.
And this is your own government, your own Conservative Prime Minister you're talking about?
Well, I can only say it as I see it. What happened last night was, because the first vote on taking no deal off the table was so close, there was only 4 votes in it, a number of very pro-Remain ministers realised that and thought, crumbs, if we don't do something, you know, it could actually be overturned on the second because it's so close. So they deliberately left. In defiance of a three-line whip, the Prime Minister obeyed, or was with her own three-line whip. All the other ministers and backbenchers went through the lobby to oppose the amended motion. These ministers absented themselves.
Do you think they're being protected by 10 Downing Street?
Well, 10 Downing Street clearly have done nothing about it, so of course they are.
Right, and what do you think of that?
Well, if you do not have collective responsibility, you know, ministers are supposed to support each other and, you know, work together as a government. That's how our constitution works. And under our constitution, if a minister cannot support the policy of the government, they have to resign, which is what Sarah Newton honourably did.
But they don't have to resign, we've seen it.
Well, that's...
Discipline is broken down.
Well, completely. Yeah, as I said, collective responsibility fell off its horse and died. You may as well... It's not the fault of the Whip's office, they're not giving the orders. So, you may as well dissolve the Whip's office and send them all off, you know, for a 2-year holiday.
Bearing that in mind then, how long can your government last?
I'm going to focus today on these critical votes.
How long do you reckon?
Well, let's see what happens, but should we say the Prime Minister's authority is seeping away?
But she has got a little bit of authority left, you're saying?
Well, every backbench MP in the Tory party, in fact every MP in the House of Commons can see what's going on. When you have ministers who openly defy the Prime Minister, who openly defy a three-line whip, and nothing happens to them, you have to ask yourself, are you really in power? Indeed, are you really even in office?
That's a Conservative